Okay, so back to your story.
Okay.
So let's talk about your brother. Again, very serious, big gear shift change. Did that happen while you were a jazz dancer?
Yeah, I
Okay.
found out while I was at a game.
So let's just talk about your brother. Anything about his bio and his history that
So my
you want to
brother
share?
Brian, he is the oldest of all of us 10.
He's the
And-
oldest. Okay.
And he grew up in Utah, went to Alta High School, played football, very athletic, went to Snow College, and I can't remember if he went to the University of Utah at one point. He was 20, I want to say he was 22. I know he was home from his mission and married when I was born. So I missed all of that. But yeah, I was at a game, and I have his daughter is very close in age to me. She's actually more like a sister to me than she is a niece. And she tried calling me while we were getting ready to go out to greet, and that was kind of weird because she usually just texts me. And so I declined the call and said, "Hey, I'm at a game. What's up?" And she was typing, and I don't really know how to explain this, but I kind of knew what she was going to tell me. Brian was going through a lot in his personal life at the time of his death. And so that's...
So yeah, what can you say about what his life was like before you got the news?
He was under immense pressure. And I don't want to go into detail, but It was just, he was in a really, really, really hard, dark space in his life. And I had last seen him at the end of December at our family Christmas party. And I remember feeling like I had never seen him like that before. He is usually the life of the party. He's a very loud personality. He's funny, outgoing, and he sat on a chair in the corner at the Christmas party and said maybe 2 words the whole time. So I knew something was really wrong when I'd seen him last. And so, like I said, I had my phone out at the game, and my niece sent me a message and told me that my brother had died. And it was...
So you found out while you were...
At the game. Yeah, like about to go. I mean, we had just gotten ready. We were about to go.
Oh, no.
So, yeah. Yeah, so, yeah. And again, it's just very different in comparison to Lisa, because Lisa was like complete shock. With Brian, it was like devastating, but I almost just felt like it was coming.
Yeah, just because he was in such a dark place, and you knew he was in a dark place.
And he was very depressed, and we could see it.
What are some of the signs that people should look out for that maybe you saw in Brian? Just so that people can try and be more aware or attuned when a loved one is struggling.
I don't know why nobody caught this, but the week before he died, he called all of us, like a lot. He was trying to reach everyone in his life. He called all of his friends and all of us in the family. And I don't know why we didn't put together, I guess maybe we didn't know that he was reaching out to all of us, but he had reached out to all of us to try to say his goodbyes before. I think he was staying home more. He seemed more isolated, more retreated, more reserved. His energy, like I said, at that party was really low. And yeah, I guess what I could say is if you know that somebody's going through a lot in their personal life, reach out to them, let them know you're an open door, because we knew that Brian was his personal life was exploding, and I don't think we showed up enough for him as a family during that time.
I'm going to go ahead and read a list just off of Wikipedia of the warning signs of suicide. Previous suicide attempts, it says that's the biggest risk factor. 80% of suicide attempts come from somebody who's attempted before. Mentioning a suicide plan, which we talked about earlier, they voice an intent to kill themselves before they actually do it. Acquiring the means, such as a gun, rope, poison, or stockpiling pills. Preoccupation with death in conversations. giving away valuable items or favorite prized possessions on impulse, reject recent neglect of their appearance or hygiene, cleaning and tidying a room far more than usual, morosely sad, depressed, hopeless, or lacking energy, rage, uncontrolled anger, or seeking revenge, increased use of alcohol or drug abuse, too much sleep or too little sleep, sudden lift in spirits or happiness after long sadness because in their mind the end is near, withdrawing from friends, family, or prior interests, dramatic change in dress or personal activities, rewriting a will or farewell letters or visiting to say goodbye, apologizing to others for various past actions, taking deadly risks such as driving fast or running red lights, absenteeism or poor performance at work or school, actions or words of hopelessness, intense anger, or unexplained happiness. I can see you're feeling some things. What are you, as I read through that, does it make you feel some things?
Yeah, I can recognize a bunch on that list. Retreating, anger, using more substances, and energy. Yeah. A lot of those things.
And when you start feeling emotional, how do you describe why you're feeling emotional as I read that? Is it like, what is it that it brings up for you?
I think, I wanted to be, and I find myself often wrestling with anger. I want to be mad at Brian because he already knew what we went through when Lisa died. But as you read that list, I feel a lot of sympathy and compassion for where he was at and what he must have been feeling.
It's sometimes a little bit too stereotypical for people to say it was so selfish. And I just want to, there's tissue, yeah. Never say that, because if you knew what they were going through, yes, it causes pain and harm to others, but no one would want anyone else to suffer pain. It's just a testament, again, to how desperate and painful people get.
Well, and I want to mention something that's also very important. So my brother was, as I mentioned, an athlete, and he played football and he wrestled. And when he passed, I had a brother who had a suspicion that Brian might have had CTE. I don't know if you're familiar with CTE.
Yeah, that's the brain damage from contact sports.
Yeah. So we had we had him tested, and his results came back. He was on stage 4 of CTE, which most people don't reach until they're after age 60, I think. My brother was 46 when he passed. I don't know why I can't think of that.
And he was a wrestler.
And a football player.
Okay, both.
Yes. And so if you know anything about CTE, a lot of people with CTE die by suicide. So that brought some peace to our family, but maybe also something just to put out there as we're talking about, suicide awareness. That's very real.
Be very careful about contact sports where you're banging your head a lot, right?
Because we think ultimately that's why he did what he did. I mean, he had other issues, and he had, obviously, like I said, his personal life he was going through so much, but it was like a result of a lot of things that we can link back to the CTE.
Yeah, if there was depression or anger or substance abuse before, how can you not wonder if that's associated with brain damage, right? Mm-hmm. And the ongoing effects of that. How do you, when I've had loved ones close to me that were really struggling, and I have a PhD in psychology, right? I want to do everything for them. And so I want to be there for them and emotionally connected and affirming and supportive and encouraging. Sometimes almost to the point of worrying that there's codependency there. So on the one hand, you can notice that someone's really struggling and really want to be there for them. Sometimes your efforts can backfire and you can make things worse because nobody wants to be a project. Nobody wants to feel like they're causing pain or suffering. Sometimes I think that can even exacerbate someone's hopelessness if they feel like they're a burden to other people. So there's that, but then there's also just how do you help? I imagine if I had or ever do have a loved one who attempts suicide, I'll wonder, what could I have done? Mm-hmm. But even when I've tried to be there for someone who might have been thinking about that, I don't always know what to do, how to make it better. And so there's that question of, did you ever how much did you ever beat yourself up or wonder, could I have done more? Should I have noticed the signs earlier? Versus could you have done anything? You know what I mean? Have you thought about any of that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually was not, I wasn't totally on the best terms with my brother when he passed. So if there's one thing I've thought about more than anything, it's been that. And I was angry with him over some stuff that had happened. Again, everything that was going on in his life right then, I was a little bit angry with him. And so I was disconnected from him. And that's my biggest regret in the world.
But even then, sometimes you have to have boundaries to keep yourself safe, or because someone's not acting healthily or stably. So I guess I'm saying there are healthy boundaries, and then there's just anger and contention. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But generally speaking, somebody who's in that space, I think letting them know, regardless of whether they take you up on your offer or not, but letting them know that you are there as a support to them and that you are a listening ear. And then in those dark moments, honestly, just physically being with somebody, being next to somebody, making sure they're not alone, going over to their house, visiting, putting in effort. Yeah, just let them know that you're there for them, and then actually show up and be there for them. Sounds simple, but
any other tips? Like if somebody's dealing with someone we've talked about the warning signs. Any other?
I would
tips?
say just don't let them be alone as much as possible.
And that can't be sustainable in the long term, right? Mm-hmm. So what else? Get them help?
Well, yeah. Oh, yeah. Professional help.
And then what if they don't necessarily want to seek help? What if they feel too desperate? Or I part of me is just feeling like there's no easy answers here.
I don't think there are any easy answers. Yeah, I don't know how to answer that.
I'll just say, as I was a therapist, having suicidal clients, it could wreck my life just worrying about them when I wasn't with them. What if they do it? Are they going to do it? Are they okay? Check up on them. I had to realize that ultimately that decision was out of my control. And in some ways I had to just let it go. And so there's this never give up, always be there for them, don't let them be alone. Yes. But is there also
ultimately the choice is theirs, yes. And you if you know that you have done all that you can, and if you've extended yourself, and if you've shown up, and if you've been there, and then ultimately they choose what they choose, that's when you get to work on understanding that we don't know everything. And everything is, it's funny that I'm saying this, and everything is not for us to know. So, in those cases, do all that you can, and then you let it fall where it may, I guess.
Trent writes, I think it is so important to understand that it is never the fault of good people around a person who succeeds in a suicide attempt. So he's just basically saying, never blame yourself if you survive a loved one. It's never, but I almost want to say it's never the person's fault who successfully completes a suicide. That it has to be that things were so bad, it was beyond, in many or most or all cases, beyond their ability to.
Well, again, this is what makes suicide so complicated. It depends which angle you look at it.
Yeah.
This is the gray that we're talking about. Because was it a choice? Yeah. Could people have been there for him more? Yes. Do we know how much pain he was in? No.
Can we judge?
No.
That's why you never say they were selfish, or you never you just have to just mourn, right? Mm-hmm. So what was it like for you in the aftermath of your brother passing?
I'm still in it.
Trigger? Oh,
I'm still in it.
so how long has it been?
It's been a year. It's been just over a year.
Now, when we first met for breakfast, was it just right after that had happened?
I think so.
Because
was it even? It was after that.
I think maybe I wondered whether that might have been the trigger for you to reach out to me.
I can't remember. I thought it was before or after, but yeah, I'm still in it. I think for the first 6 months, I felt a lot of denial and it just wasn't real. And then the holidays came around and when he wasn't at family parties and then it was like I can only hide from it or run from it for so long or to such a point, and then I have to face it.
What does that mean, to face it?
I have to accept that it really happened, because I think I'm still in some denial. Because it's not like I was living with my brother. I didn't see him every day. So like I said, then when I go somewhere and he should be there and he's not there, I can't pretend that it didn't happen anymore. And from there comes a lot of, I can say the emotions that I felt most since losing Brian have been hopelessness and helplessness and anger and regret.
Anger at. Do you have a source for the anger, or
angry at the situation, angry at a lot of different people involved, angry at my brother, if I'm being honest. Yeah, sometimes I do get angry.
I mean, and you don't choose your feelings, so that's what you feel, right?
Right. I'm just speaking. I allow myself to feel how I feel about it and try to do so without judgment, because I think it will allow me to, if I can accept that I'm feeling that way, process it, I can release it better. So yeah, just being honest. Of course I get angry about it. And then I get angry at myself because I was so cold to him in the months before he died. And it's just, there's a lot,
and yet you probably had reasons, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot of complicated emotion following death.
And some things I understand about grieving is, there are the classic stages of grief, like shock and denial and anger and depression, and then testing and ultimately acceptance. Things I understand about grief is they don't happen linearly. They can happen multiple at a time. They can happen out of order. You can feel like you're through one of the phases and then it hits you again. A lot of time grieving comes in waves where you think you're better and then it smacks you. I don't want to tell you.
No, the grief coming in waves is, there are days where I am not even thinking about Brian. And it just is overwhelming. You don't know when those emotions are going to come up for you. Obviously, there's some things that can trigger it, but oftentimes it will just come. The emotion will just come. Or one simple
How do you cope?
thought.
What are your methods for coping with?
I let myself feel it.
Meaning what?
I cry if I need to cry. I go home if I need to go home. I'm alone. I try to, if I need to think about him, I think about him. Or if I need to look at pictures of him, I look at pictures of him. Whatever it is, I've learned that if I try to suppress it, whether it's anger or whether it's sadness, then it always comes back to bite me and it comes back 10 times worse. So if I just embrace whatever emotion comes, it seems to, like I said, pass easier.
For those who haven't heard my wife Margie's interview on Mormon Stories, she lost her dad a year or two before I interviewed her, Bill Weber, and he meant the world to her. And the way that she handled grieving, it was going to be so distressing and overwhelming for her that every day from his death onward, she had already developed the practice of mindfulness and meditation after I'd been excommunicated, because it was just so distressing to everyone in our family. But once her dad died, she developed the practice of every morning intentionally grieving. So she would do her 10 minutes on the mindfulness app, and then she would spend 10 minutes thinking of her dad. And she would just cry and cry and cry every morning. And I would just be thinking, why are you doing this to yourself? You know what I mean? Because it just felt so sad. And she basically said, if I can let a little bit out each day by leaning into it and choosing it and leaning into it, then it doesn't build up as this big thing that overwhelms me. So by her, not just leaning in, but intentionally grieving with a regular frequency, was a really important part of her healing. How does that sound to you? Healthy, not healthy?
I think that's very, very healthy. I think the biggest piece of advice I can give is, again, don't avoid and don't suppress. If it comes for you and you're at work, again, and you need to leave and you need to be alone, you need to listen to that. The ways in which I've handled grief in unhealthy, in an unhealthy manner have all come from when I've avoided it for a long time, because it will catch up to you. So, and also I would say don't be in judgment of whatever emotion you're feeling, especially when it comes to a death by suicide. I think it was easy for me. Like, I'd get angry and then I would be mad at myself for feeling angry. And I'm like, why are you feeling angry at them? You didn't understand them, or you have no idea how they were feeling. Why are you judging them? And I would in turn judge myself for whatever emotion I was feeling. Allow yourself to feel however you feel.
What are some of the feelings you had that you felt shameful about?
Well, blaming them, judging them, angry at them, especially at Brian, thinking our family's already been through this before. How could you put us through this again? I'm just speaking honestly here. I'm not saying that those are...
Oh, yeah, right, because we don't choose our feelings. And oftentimes we don't choose our thoughts. That's something we don't understand that you learn as a psychologist. You don't usually choose your feelings and you don't usually choose your thoughts. You experience them. And if you try and make them go away or avoid them, usually you generate more of those thoughts you're trying to avoid. And the more you suppress your emotions, the more they grow and build up to the point of exploding. So not beating yourself up over any thoughts or feelings you have, not trying to avoid them, but leaning into them. Keep going.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Just, allow the emotion to come and don't be in judgment of whatever emotion it is, and find a healthy outlet for how to reconcile that emotion, whether that's, laying in your bed crying for a few hours, or going for a run, or writing in a journal, or whatever it may be. But more than anything, just be kind to yourself during the grieving process, because grieving is more difficult. If you haven't been through it, then you don't understand how difficult it is. And it's extremely difficult. And it deserves and warrants a lot of compassion and grace and patience. And you should exercise that on yourself as you would anyone else, in the family or that has been affected by the death.
We have a lot of questions that people are writing in. Is it okay if I ask you some questions?
Yes.
Joanna writes, I've experienced this. It's devastating. It's been 15 to 16 years between both. So she's experienced two, and it becomes part of you. I want to hear more of this, as well as how to support people who have losses like this. I have my opinions of what I've taken from my experiences. So basically, and then Amelia writes, what is the right thing to say to a family member of a suicide victim? And I imagine there's what not to say. And even in the Mormon context, I think that can become more charged. Mm-hmm. So anything you want to say about how to support people, what to say and what not to say?
I am not easily offended. So what went through my head is has there been anything that anyone said to me that has offended me that I would say don't say? Not really personally. I know other people who have been very offended by the comment that it was selfish. Not that I've said that, but there have been people who've said that, and I've seen people get really offended by that. So that's a hard question, what to say and what not to say.
So one of the common ones is like, oh, he's in a good place now, or Heavenly Father needed him on the other side, or it's all going to be fine because we have the plan of salvation. So any type of plan of salvation answer.
Yeah.
How is that for you? Or what do you think about that being good or not good? Or
if anything, it reminds me that I'm now at a place where I don't totally know. So I don't appreciate that. I had someone recently say to me, I can't imagine what I would, or how I would handle the death of someone close to me without the knowledge of the plan of salvation. And it reminded me that I don't have that knowledge of the plan of salvation. And so I'm like, well, yeah, that does kind of suck. That's hard to not know where I felt like I had known. So I would avoid, especially if they're a non-member or an ex or post or wherever they're at, anything like that, saying things like that. Also asking too many questions. I had a lot of people ask me questions about my siblings. Just, nosy, disrespectful. That should seem obvious, but I want to say it because it wasn't always obvious. Mm-hmm. As far as what to say to somebody, don't try to change how they feel. Just let them know that you love them and support them. But you don't have to make it like, I didn't need somebody to come to me and tell me I didn't want anyone to tell me that this was okay. That my brother dying, that it's okay. He was in a really dark place. It was a really hard time. It wasn't okay. And I didn't want somebody to tell me that things were okay. I just wanted somebody to, just offer love and compassion.
Yeah, just love and compassion. I've noticed that you've tried to do some work in suicide prevention. Do you have any wisdom or tools or perspective on if there's anything we can do to prevent other than what we've already talked about?
So when Brian died, I really dove into some suicide prevention efforts. I actually established my own organization. It's called Live Now. And what ended up happening was that got a lot of traction and had a lot of momentum. We had a lot of opportunity. And the first few events that we did as a group, it was too overwhelming for me. It was too soon. So I backed off of it. So I actually haven't been as involved in suicide prevention the last 9 months. It's something that I foresee for myself, but it was just too fresh.
I remember when you were doing that, I'm like, whoa, go girl. And then
I know, I was ambitious. And then reality set in and it was really hard. I need time to, another piece of advice. Because I think other people who lose people to suicide, they have that instinct, I want to help other people. I don't want other families to feel this. And I totally get that. But take the time that you need for yourself first, because I tried to rush into it and it made it harder, I think. So take your time. Mm-hmm. Okay. I believe it's Juliet who asked, we're meaning-making creatures. And so there's probably a tendency to want to make meaning of it, to make sense of it, to justify it, to explain it, or to find some noble reason why it happened so that you can survive or go on or build or be happy again. Talk about that tendency to make meaning out of it and purpose, and if that's been important for your healing or not, or harmful, You know what? Absolutely. I think Live Now is a product of me trying to make something meaningful out of losing Brian and Lisa. Because you're going to go through all that pain, so it needs to mean something, or it needs to be worthwhile. And what I've learned is that there is good that we experience in this life, and there is bad. And sometimes it just is what it is. And to try and say that what happened to Brian and Lisa is anything but tragic and sad is a lie. And it's just part of the human experience. So rather than try to twist that and say that, and obviously beautiful things do come out of experiences like this, but sometimes they just are what they are, and embrace that, because I've learned so much through that tragedy, but that doesn't mean that it isn't a tragedy. What beautiful can come from this? What beauty? Well, what beauty? Okay, so you're asking me to try to find something beautiful out of this. No, I don't want you to, only if you feel like something has. Or if it's too early, or if you don't know, that's fine too. I'm trying to imagine. Yeah, because what I'm trying to say is that maybe nothing beautiful does come out of this. What I'm trying to say is that maybe this just is what it is, and it just, like I said, is part of the human experience. Okay. To experience tragedy. Got it. Yeah, Buddhism says life is suffering. That's how it begins. Just life is suffering. It is part of it, yeah. It's part of it, yeah. And don't resist it. That doesn't have to be a bad thing. That can just add to your wisdom as a human being. It can make you more, I guess, if we're looking at a positive outcome, it can make you more empathetic, can make you more mindful, can make you more sensitive. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. To other people. Yeah. To other people and to yourself. Yeah. Watching what my siblings went through has in times I've needed to remind myself, or I've needed to remind myself to manage my own emotions to be honest about my emotions, to get help if I need it, to cope in healthy ways. Yeah.
Good. Jolynn Prince, we've had her on Mormon Stories. She's an advocate for autism. She asks, how did you want to be comforted? And what was the most supportive thing that occurred to help you cope? So take each one separately.
I think that is a very personal question that's going to obviously vary. But for myself personally, I just wanted the physical support of my family around me. I wanted loved ones and friends to show up, come to my house, give me a call, give me a hug, hold me. And then what was the second part of the...
So hold you, show up.
Be there physically
Be
for
there
me.
physically.
Yeah, don't let me be... I didn't want to be alone.
And then are they talking to you all the time? Are they trying to, are they just being there? Are they trying to be funny? Are they...
Just being there.
What is that, just quietly?
Yeah, just quietly being there. Like the times that I felt most supported was when I had a loved one that would just hold me while I cried or would just sit and listen to me while I spoke.
So listen.
And not try to make sense of it for me, because people did try to do that.
To reassure you.
Or try to make sense of why he did what he did. Well, let's piece it together and I don't want to make sense of it. That doesn't change the fact that he's gone. I just want to talk about how it feels to not have him here.
So be there for you, hold you while you cry, listen.
Listen.
Don't try
and
not
don't
to
try to make
it
sense okay. Yeah.
That's good. A lot of people are sending you love and support for your willingness to talk about this. Mark asks, how do you find a way to reconcile yourself to this reality and move forward in a direction that will lead to a healthy and productive existence for you? How do you get hope again? I
have just fully embraced what I talked about earlier, which is that life is full of joy and it is full of pain. I've just embraced it, because if I try to have this expectation that life should only be joyful, I'm going to be continually disappointed, and I'll resist the meaning and lessons and wisdom that can come out of the difficulty. So the way that I've reconciled it is to say simply, this is a part of life. I can learn from this, and there's going to be joy that will come, and there'll be more hard that will come. But again, just eliminating this resistance to like pain and heartache, rather embracing it as part of the human experience.
And that's why I love Secular Buddhism Podcast by Noah Rasheta, because Buddhism at its core really teaches that acceptance and even embracing the difficulty actually leads. There's a difference between pain and suffering. Life is going to always present pain and joy, but also pain. Suffering is the extra pain that we add to life when we don't accept the original pain. We fight and sometimes struggle against something hard and make it worse. So if you can accept the pain, ironically, sometimes that leads to less suffering.
Absolutely. If
you can just accept it and embrace it. And it probably sounds simplistic or glib, but Buddhism's been around a long time.
Yeah.
And a lot of people I really respect who have been through some really hard things have found wisdom. So another shout out to Noah Rasheta, Secular Buddhism Podcast. If you listen to those 80, 90 episodes, I think you'll find a lot of health and healing and strength in that. So what are your beliefs now? Like, you used to be religious and orthodox, and then you kind of lost your faith. Do you, we could talk about God, we could talk about Jesus, we could talk about the resurrection, we could talk about heaven, true churches, no religion. Talk to us about how you've landed and if any of that's been influenced, because you kind of lost your faith in some ways independent. I guess your sister passed first, but in some ways that was an independent process, but it was connected. But are you comfortable sharing where you've landed now?
Yeah, absolutely. So after I first left the church, I attended a non-denominational Christian church for some time, and that was a really good transition for me. It kind of softened the blow.
Did you meet Rachel there?
No, I met her in high school.
Okay. Because she's really...
She is, yeah.
And she's also into suicide prevention, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
She's actually the co-founder of Live Now. We did it together.
Okay. What's her last name, Rachel?
Wonderly.
Wonderly, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Fun. She's a great singer.
She's amazing.
Yeah, okay.
But no, so I did the non-denominational thing for like 6 months. And then I kind of realized that many of the principles that I had applied, or I guess many of the motives for leaving Mormonism applied to Christianity as well. So that was like a big step for me to go from, I left Mormonism, that was huge, but at least I still had Christian faith.
You still got God and Jesus, yeah.
And then I left that. And that was the biggest like, whoa, okay, now I've really shifted as a human being. So where I'm at today is, and this is interesting. Before my brother died, truly, in the weeks before he died, I had come to terms with being an atheist. I just thought, yeah, I'd consider myself atheist. And then my brother died. And I had I don't know if, to be fair, I don't know if it was just emotional or what it was, but there were some, very personal experiences that have led me to the belief now that I believe that there is life after this. I don't believe in God. I don't believe in Christ as the Savior or the atonement necessarily, but I believe in an energy that exists after this and probably one that was before this.
A personal, individual entity, energy. Mm-hmm. So you do believe in life after death? Mm-hmm. Okay. And then religious stuff, church stuff?
I think religions have caused more wars than they've brought any peace to the earth, so I don't believe in organized religion.
Right
Yeah.
Well, what about spirituality? What does that mean to you now, or does it have a role?
I'm, again, through losing... So I very much considered myself an intellectual in the last 2-3 years, and I almost felt no need for spirituality. And I thought that it wasn't affecting my life at all, not having a sense of spirituality. And then since losing Brian, I've reconnected a little bit with some sense of spirituality, and that has filled kind of a void that I've had. And so what I'm trying to articulate is that I've realized spirituality is important to me, and it's time that I get to rediscover what that looks like for me, because I have had a little bit of a feeling of emptiness, not having had that and just taking an intellectual route. So I have no idea what that will bring to me. I'm just becoming aware that I should probably, I need some of that in my life again.
But you're not sure exactly what that's going to look like?
No, I don't know where to find it. I don't know where to find it. So that's kind of the path that I'm on right now, is that I thought I was an atheist. I've had a couple of really great, powerful experiences. I want to explore where I'm at spiritually and hopefully, center myself there again, because I took such a step back from it when I left the church.
But you're not going to any Christian church anytime soon.
No.
For you, that's not a possibility.
No.
Check out Secular Buddhism.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a really great podcast.
Okay, I will.
And Buddhism is not really a religion, by the way. Mm-hmm. It's more of a life philosophy and an approach to mental health and spirituality that you can be an atheist if you want and still find value in it. So that's a shout out. Okay, so as we're kind of wrapping up, I can think of two last questions. So one is, there's this unfortunate thing that accompanies Orthodox religion, which is if somebody leaves the church, then they're just looking for them to slip up. So it's like, oh, well, see, they got divorced, or oh, they drank, or oh, they had deaths in their lives, right? And there's sort of like this tendency that believers would have to almost subconsciously get satisfaction from someone who leaves the church having really bad things happen to them, because then they can say, see, I'm safe in the church, and see, it's, staying in the church is good, and if you leave the church, that's bad. If somebody were to say that to you, wow, look at all this, see, look, you left the church. That's what you get. If you were to hear someone say that to you or about you, or someone were to actually say it, what would be your most loving, gracious, grounded response to them?
I think it's kind of ironic that I lost a sibling. I lost a sibling and I went through one divorce while being active. And then I lost a sibling and I went through one divorce while not being in the church at all. So I would say it's very irrelevant.
There's some parity, right?
Yeah.
Meaning, are you saying pain happens to you either way?
Yes.
Is that what you're
Well,
saying?
no, I'm just saying that that's completely, that is completely unrelated to leaving the church. And again, I have never felt more authentic and honest in how I'm living, which in turn means on many levels, I've never felt more at peace than I have since leaving the church.
And some people might say that's impossible. I mean, we're taught wickedness never is happiness. And of course, I'm not saying you're wicked, but to a believing mind, you can't find health and happiness outside of the church because it's all sin and woe. It's the mists of darkness, right?
Mm-hmm. No, I just think my life, like, the difficulties that I faced, those haven't changed at all. They were the same when I was in the church and they're the same out. The only, like, what has changed for me is how I feel on an inner, conscious level, which is, happy and empowered and like hopeful and open. And I think I'm such a, so you interviewed my uncle, Clay Christensen.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Wait, how are you related to Clay again?
He's my uncle.
Meaning he's
So he's my dad's sister's husband.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
He's great.
He's great.
Clay is amazing.
He is. He's so great. And he said he had never felt more Christ-like until after he left the church because he realized how judgmental he was and self-righteous while he was in the church. And I agree 100% with that. I am so proud of how much more open-minded I am, non-judgmental. I don't look at people through any kind of lens. I just let them come to me as they are. And that's, I love that about myself. And I didn't have that when I was in the church.
I love it. Okay, so final, I'm gonna mention to you a series of sort of things that can happen to you in life. And I'm going to have you imagine somebody who's been through the thing that I mentioned and have you offer just some brief thoughts or wisdom or encouragement to each person. Is that okay?
Sure.
So I'll stay with me. And if you want to look into the camera and you say you can, if not, if that's too cheesy, that's fine too. Somebody, let's just say they're a teen or an early young adult who's questioning and losing their faith. What would you, encouragement, advice, whatever you want to say, what would you say to them who's like, if I lose my faith, my world will fall apart, bad things will happen, like I'm scared, it could be really hard. What would you say to them?
I would say go somewhere where you can be really quiet and really in tune with yourself. And no matter how scary it is or foreign it may feel, allow yourself to listen to what you're feeling. And then be brave enough to lead with that. If the answer, whatever, because it could go however it will go when you're in those quiet moments. But if the answer leads you away from your faith, have courage and know that there is actually a really great community of young, even high school, but also just young adults, post-Mormon, that will accept you. We've been through it. We get it. You're definitely not alone in it. And I was so worried that my life would suck when I left the church. And I just want to tell people there is so much good in the world. And I am so happy and have had so many incredibly fun, awesome, amazing experiences. Don't be scared that life won't be fun or happy after, because there's a lot of life after Mormonism and it's really good.
So you're saying with as much pain as you've experienced and difficulty, you're loving life?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Without the church in this case?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Even more so.
Even more so? Okay.
Absolutely more so, 100%.
Okay. What would you say to someone facing divorce or who's been through divorce and they're just really having a hard time?
I would reiterate what you said. If somebody's facing divorce, if the marriage is salvageable, do everything you can. Because when you get divorced, you tend to think the grass is greener, but really you're exchanging one set of problems for another. And sometimes that's the right answer, and you get to face those new problems and you've still made the right answer. And sometimes that's the wrong answer. So unless you are clear that divorce is your answer, if there's a hope, I would say roll with it for a while until you're clear. If somebody who is struggling, who has been recently divorced, I just don't give up. Probably sounds cheesy, but don't give up hope, because things get so much better. And yeah, and that sounds cheesy. That's terrible advice. I don't know.
It seems like you're not carrying a lot of shame for being divorced.
No,
Why not?
not
Why
at
not?
all.
How dare you?
Well, I used to be really embarrassed about it. And especially after I was twice divorced, again, as I said earlier, I'm like, how will people look at me? And somebody said to me once, the fact that you've been twice divorced should show that you actually do believe in marriage and you believe in love, because you're willing to do it twice. And that's the truth. And that's how I choose to look at it. Like, this is something that's important to me. This is something that I want. And it shouldn't be, yeah, I'm not ashamed of it anymore.
Yeah. I mean, it's not a trivial thing when there are kids involved to have a family break up. And my dad doesn't like me to say this, so I'll just say I'm the product of divorce. So I can speak firsthand that it's very painful. On the other hand, I think we have a way over-exaggerated perspective of marriage and divorce, because the goal of life shouldn't be marriage. Mm-hmm. The goal of life should be joy and healthy living. And if you reach the point where your marriage has become unhealthy or toxic or bad for you or them or both or the kids, then it should be a festival. It should be a celebration. It's like, thank you for our time together. I love you. I wish you well. It's time to try something else for both of us. And it should be a celebration. Why should it be anything else?
Well, and for me, I don't feel shame anymore because I know the truth. And I think anyone in my shoes, would they have chosen, I am very confident in the choices that I made, and I know why I made them. And I don't feel shame around my story because I own it. I know the truth. I don't care about other people's perspective on it because they don't know the full story.
Yeah.
And if I do, and I feel that I chose the best that I could with the knowledge that I had, then that's all I can ask.
Yeah. And all I'm saying is it's got to be better to get divorced and to find health and happiness and fulfillment than to stay in a marriage and be miserable and sad
absolutely.
And sick.
Yeah.
It should be everyone don't give up, fight for the marriage, take care of the kids. Don't live in misery. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. If you have to, get divorced and then remarry, like Dan Reynolds and his wife, right? Get divorced, but then get married again. But don't be miserable is all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Don't be miserable. Is that good advice?
We're not advocating for divorce or marriage. Just whatever works.
Just joy. Find joy.
Yeah.
Okay, to somebody, this is probably really tough, but to somebody who is contemplating suicide, we don't want to be preachy. We don't want to be shaming. What would you say to that person?
I would say just please don't. And
please don't do it.
Yeah, don't do it. Because if you're not able to live for yourself, like live for somebody else, just for temporarily. Like for me, when I was in that space, I didn't want to live for myself. I didn't care. I didn't want to be here. Myself was miserable. I was miserable. But I lived like for my dad. I lived for my niece. I lived for my siblings just until I got to the place where I was healthy enough to start, focusing on new goals and having motivation and ambition again. But in that time where I literally had no desire to be here, I just thought about the people that I loved, and I lived for them until I was, healthy enough to take care of myself.
Yeah, because we just got through talking about how end a marriage if you're miserable, but you could easily just say, well, end a life if you're miserable. So you're not saying endure the misery forever. You're saying if you need to live for other people for now.
Just temporarily, yeah.
Do it for now until you can get the help. Mm-hmm. And the help that people should seek out, a therapist.
Yes.
Impact training.
Yeah.
Yeah. workshops, retreats, books, self-help, whatever. Like, there's all sorts of ways, but I mean, that's its own thing. We'll have to do it in our own section on like mental health, happiness, well-being, because that's a thing. So you're saying that, okay. And then what would you say to a survivor, somebody who's had a loved one take their life? What would you offer to
Again,
them?
However you feel, you feel. Don't be in judgment of it. Allow it to come, and don't resist it. Also, this is just true. It's a long road, and that's okay. It should be. Like, I could look back and see how, I didn't accomplish, like, I haven't graduated college. That's something that I could really beat myself up over and be mad about. But I'm also like, yeah, but I was grieving the loss of my sister during that time. I mean, just the expectation that you put on yourself. And you were supporting
your husband because the church taught you that, right?
Right. And the expectation that you put, like, be gentle with yourself, because grief is long and it's hard and it's real and it's warranted. And yeah, be kind to yourself through it.
Okay. So what dreams or goals do you have for yourself? Do you have a career? Do you have thoughts about a career you want to pursue? Are you pursuing anything? Do you have a dream?
Yeah.
Like, what are your dreams and goals, if you want to share, whatever you're comfortable sharing?
Yeah. If I were to go, when I choose to go back to school, I have like a year and a half left, and then I've graduated. I'm in a marketing position right now, and so I have changed my major to marketing. I'd love to pursue something there. And then ultimately, as ironic as this is, I still have just like, I want to be a wife and a mother. It's funny because people think that, the Mormon girls get a lot of crap for that, and I get that. But for me, genuinely, family has always been such a core value of mine, and motherhood is something that I so look forward to. So yeah, I want to finish college and see where that takes me. But ultimately, I want to have a family.
Which means you want to have a boyfriend and eventually get married.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, that would be great. Well, marriage, I don't know. Maybe I won't get married again.
Maybe have a kid.
Maybe I'll be a lifelong girlfriend and a mother.
Got it. Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to trust again sometimes.
Yeah, no, I want a family. That's kind of where I'm at in life right now. Like, that's my focus.
Are there any websites or resources you want to point people to, either just about you or just about suicide prevention or awareness or anything?
The American Foundation for Suicide Prevention is amazing, and the Utah chapter of that is incredible. The president, her name's Taryn, and she's amazing, and there's tons of resources on there. So, yeah, that's probably...
Okay. Anything? Do you want people to follow you on Instagram or Facebook or any of that?
No, don't follow me on Instagram. Just kidding. No, sure. Follow me on Instagram. Friend me. Whatever.
If somebody wants help, if they want to reach out to get support or help, do you want people to reach out to you?
Absolutely.
Well,
absolutely. If anyone, would like to talk about if you've lost someone to suicide, or if you're in that space yourself, I've had a lot of conversation with people around this. I mean, tons, and I'm happy and open to talk about it whenever. So my name is Liz Layton. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram. It's Liz Layton and then 2 underscores. So I would say message me on social media would be the best way to reach me.
Okay.
So yeah.
Liz, you're so delightful, and you're so wise and grounded. And I felt that the first time we met. I'm like, why is a jazz dancer reaching out to me? What's this going to be like? And I'm just really impressed and grateful. And I love what you're doing with what life's given you, and you're inspiring. So
thank you so much.
Thank you for finally coming on Mormon Stories.
I know. This is good timing.
I'm glad the timing worked out.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. All right, keep in touch. All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us again for another epic marathon Mormon Stories interview. It's been great to have you. If you value this kind of stuff, please become a monthly donor at mormonstories.org. $10, $50, $100 a month, whatever you can afford, keeps the lights on at our nonprofit. It's all tax deductible in the U.S., and it goes towards keeping the podcast alive. Thank you. And please share this with whoever you think might be useful. I think there's a lot of people that will find hope and inspiration and education. We will be doing more episodes on suicide, suicide prevention, suicide education. We're going to bring on some real experts to talk about this. If you've got a story around suicide or suicide prevention, feel free to email us at mormonstories@gmail.com. We can't promise that we can tell every story, but we can find ways to have you write them if you don't come on the show. But we want to help start addressing the suicide epidemic, as some people call it, in Utah. So please reach out. Please let us know, and please share this information, not only this episode, but the future episodes. Please share it, because I think education has to be one of the ways that we work through this and get to a better place. So thanks to everyone who supports us, who's a donor, who's a listener. And we're going to be doing a lot of cool stuff in the future. I've got almost 200 interviews in the queue, a lot of cool things in the works. So thanks for supporting Mormon Stories. Please keep supporting us. And we'll see you all again soon on Mormon Stories. Take care, everybody. And a huge shout out to Jeff for helping us in the production today, since Cody is in the Netherlands. Shout out to Cody, but also thanks, Jeff. You're awesome.